Hi class. In this video, we're going to look at setting up our GitHub access so that we can control our source code using GitHub repositories and so that we can use that to turn in our assignments. I'm on Canvas looking at the page that is talking about GitHub access, and I'm going to open this instructor PowerPoint, and it's going to give us a little bit more information about GitHub. GitHub is a source code control system or a version control system. We can think of it kind of as a library. If you look at this library, it has been set up as an archive, a repository for all of these books or all of these documents. They're all organized so that they're easily accessible. We might be able to find even previous versions of some of the documents. With GitHub, we are trying to enable that same kind of organization of our files, our source code control files, and we're going to keep those in a facility called a repository. And a repository is just a place or a receptacle where things are stored, and our GitHub repository is going to be in the cloud. So if we look at this diagram down in the corner, we can see that this software delivery repository could be thought of as our GitHub repository. It's out there in the cloud, and we're going to be sending that software to multiple different computers. We want to send it to computers over here on domain A and computers over here on domain B. But we can use our repository to direct those downloads so that we have one central location for all of our source code. We also can use that same location to download that source code to developers so that the code can be modified, updated, and revised. When a developer revises their source code, they're going to replace the version or update the version in the repository, the central repository. Then everybody can access the new version of the software. One thing that a source code control system like GitHub does then is keep track of those different versions so that if we had some sort of problem, we could roll back, go to a previous version of the software, or we could compare the changes between the two versions so that we could isolate where the problems occurred. We also can use a system such as this to share the code among many developers. Then when a developer is done making changes, they can request that their code be checked in to the central repository. If another developer has been working on that same code set, the repository will notify the developers, allowing them to compare the different changes that have been made to decide which changes should be integrated into the system. Because this source code control system or versioning system has a lot of capabilities, there can be some difficulties sometimes in working with it. So we want to make sure that we're approaching everything in the most straightforward way possible and know that there are lots and lots of other ways to accomplish the tasks that we'll be looking at, but we'll be looking at, again, accomplishing them in the most productive, effective way for us in our class. This is the little GitHub icon. It's kind of a scary octopus because it's got his hands in everything, you know. So to get started using GitHub, you're going to access the GitHub educational site. Now I need you to do this even if you already have a GitHub account, because by accessing the educational site, you'll be able to request an account that is considered an educational account and gives you free private repositories. And I would really like for your repositories with your classwork to be private so that you have the option of sharing your code with others if you desire, but others may not reach out and try to find your code. Maybe we're not quite in that situation. Now, you're going to request a discount. As you get into this facility, it will ask you to create an account on GitHub if you don't already have one, or to tell GitHub which account you already have. No matter how you use it, you need to use your OTC email address so that GitHub will recognize you as a student. When you do that, Your request here, your application, will go through very quickly, and you'll receive an email very quickly saying that you've been approved and that you may create private repositories. Along those lines, you can get the Student Developer Pack. It's not really a cool backpack. It's some software that you can download. Check it out and see if there's anything there that you need or that you would like to use. Now, once you've created that GitHub account and received your confirmation that you are able to use private repositories, let's get back to this here. That's not it. It's gone. There it is. You're going to download the GitHub software. All you really need to download is the base software installation. You'll see that you can use Windows or Mac or a Linux machine, whichever you would prefer. Now, this is going to be the basic command line Git software, so if you do go out and start looking at some different training, realize that you might want to also get some of the Git clients. We will not be using those. Just this basic download will be enough for us for our purposes in our Java class. Now, after you've got your account set up and the basic Git software downloaded, we're going to create a repository on GitHub. Then we're going to use NetBeans to create a local repository. Your local repository is going to be the place on your computer where you store the copy of the project that you're working on. So if the project is already on GitHub, you can clone that project or branch it or fork it. Again, I will let you do some research on those different commands. But we're going to just create a simple clone of this repository that we create. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute. And then as we change our project or create it, we're going to need to check in our changes or commit our changes, which will upload them to the repository. Now, we have two steps there. First, we have to commit, saying, yep, I want to commit these changes, and then we have to push them to our cloud-based repository. Now, again, as I've mentioned, there are lots of tutorials available. There are some resource links here. The GitHub handbook, this link will take you to the Getting Started guide from GitHub. You might find that handy. There is also a Using GitHub course available on Codecademy. If you're familiar with Codecademy, you might already have an account. If not, it's super easy to create one. It is a very short training, and it shows you how to use the Git commands. So you want to go through this Git handbook first to kind of understand what the processes are, and then you can look at the actual commands used to invoke those processes. Lastly, this document is the one that we'll be using the most, and this one is how to use GitHub with NetBeans. So we'll be able to interface directly with NetBeans to our GitHub repository so that hopefully we won't really need to use any of these other tools to accomplish our tasks. Now, using those other tools will give you great experience, and you are welcome to do so. But again, we want to try to simplify as much as possible. So I'm going to jump over here to this GitHub tab. I have created my account with GitHub, and I have logged into it, and I am sitting here looking at my organization and some different repositories that I've created. Now, I have some various ones for different testing things that I've done. I'd like to create a new one for our class, so I'm going to choose New. Your window when you log on to GitHub may look a little bit different, but no matter what, we're trying to find a spot where we can create a new repository. For your convenience, name it starting CIS171 so that you don't have to worry about getting it confused with any other repositories that you might already have. And then please, for me, put your last name and first initial so that as I'm looking at these shared repositories, I'll know whose I'm looking at without having to go search through things, and that'll help me greatly. We want, again, make this private if possible. I'd like to add a git ignore. I'm going to scroll down and find Java. And this is going to tell GitHub that there are certain files that have to do with Java that we don't need to be copied back and forth. They're kind of irrelevant to our project, like log files and things like that. Now, I could add a description. And that would be nice to have. And then I'm ready to create my repository. Now, once my repository is created, you'll see its full path is up here on the left side of the repository display. We have several different tabs for different things that we might do with our repository. One thing that we need to do is give access to our instructor. So let's click on our Settings tab, and we should be able to go to Collaborations and Teams. Being important things here, so I had to enter my password again. And then under collaborators, you should be able to add me as your instructor so that I have access to this repository. That way all of the different programs, projects, whatever that you add to the repository, I'll have access to without you having to grant me access to each individual one. My account is MRSRILEY358, Mrs. Riley 358, and you can just add me. It won't let me, but it will let you. So my OTC email should also work, but that account name is also something that you can use. Now, once you've made that change to your setting, we'll go back to our code display to continue looking at the other things that we have available to us. Now, when I'm working with GitHub, because there are so many different software packages and interfaces and features available, we see some options that might not be super meaningful to us. But I want to point out one thing that's important is here where it says clone or download. This is the complete URL to your GitHub repository. So if you're working with any sort of application or program that wants this, or if you want to open it in the GitHub desktop software, you can use this URL. I'm going to go ahead and copy that because we're going to use it in NetBeans. Now I'm going to switch to NetBeans here. Our teacher Lily Kage had it open with my slow computer. And in NetBeans, I want to access the team interface icon. And under team, I should see Git. And I would like to clone this new repository that I just created to my local machine. So I'm going to choose clone. Now I'm going to Control V to paste in that GitHub repository name that I just copied from the web. So it's going to have my organization name and then my repository name. Down here in my GitHub information, I can add my username or password. I'll try leaving my password blank and see if it prompts me for that information. Now, the bottom half of the screen is what folder would you like to use for your projects on your local machine? If I want to keep things in sync, it'll be easiest for me to keep all of my NetBeans projects in this folder and just automatically kind of, check in everything or push everything from this local folder up to my cloud-based repository. That way, as I make changes or add new projects, I can just push everything in this folder up to that repository. So I'm going to browse. And I'm going to go on my PC I think that I will use my documents folder, and this is totally up to you because it depends on how your computer is set up. If you're on a network, you might not want this folder on a network. You might want it there. So just really depends on how you would like it set up. Now I'd like to, I think, create a new folder for this. So I'm sitting in my documents folder right now. I'm going to make a new folder and I'm going to call this CIS171 Riley R. And I'll go ahead and put repo on there. So this is going to be my local repository. So I see that it's selected now in my file name. I'm going to click OK. And notice that NetBeans is going to go ahead and add another folder there. So I almost could get away with changing this and not really putting that folder name because it's already going to create a folder for me. So I think that that will be confusing. So I'm going to browse again and I'm going to go up one. I think I'll go ahead and delete this one I just created. And I'm just going to say, okay, I want it in my documents folder. This PC documents. Okay. Now, in my documents folder, NetBeans is going to create this new folder, CIS171 Riley R, and it's going to clone or copy all of the information in my GitHub repository to this new folder. My GitHub repository is pretty empty. All it has in it is that gitignore file to say that we're running Java. So I think that sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. You can see that NetBeans is trying to connect. It's angry with me because I left out my password. So I'll type that in. And I see that it has connected to my GitHub repository because my display changed, right? So now I know something's going on. And all I have on my remote branch is the master. So that's good. It's selected. All next. And where do you want this clone? Well, we wanted it in our documents folder. We already selected that. And we want it named that CIS171 Riley R. It's going to be our master branch. And this remote name that's going to be given to this master branch, it's going to be called origin. So it's going to be like our machine, our folder, is the origin of all of the code, which is true, right? Now, as I click OK on that, down in the output display for NetBeans, I'm seeing some messages telling me about how this clone process is going. It says, do you want to create an IDE project from the cloned sources? I really don't. I didn't have anything in there, so I'm just going to click Close. Now, looking at these messages, I see that it cloned my repo. Everything looks good there. It's setting up my remote named origin. Alright, so now I've got a connection made to my GitHub repository. If I look at my team menu item, we have some additional things that we can do here. We'll look at here in a minute. But let's look at our tools. And in our tools, we have well, it's all under team. There is some things. We'll just have to see where those are as we go, because right now it's not showing them to me. Things that we can use for our GitHub interface. So we must need to have a project open. So as I show you all those different icons, remember to keep aware of what you have on your menus. Let's create a new project. Now in my new project, I want to just make this some sort of test GitHub project. So I'll name it Test GitHub. I want my project location to be different because I want to use that repository that I've just set up. So I'm going to browse. I'm going to choose that repository, CIS171 Riley R. Notice it has a folder in it, a .git folder, because it is a Git repository. Now that's going to be the folder where I'm going to save this project. I do want to create a main, so I'll go ahead and finish. Now my new project has been created, and notice that it has this interesting icon here beside it. And what is that saying? It's saying that this is a source project that is on this branch master. So it contains some added, updated, or deleted files. So it's telling us basically that it is under source code control. If we look, also we see that our tab, the name on our tab is green, which is another key to us that this is under source code control. I'm going to make it a real quick program here. We are under control. Now I'm going to run this. I know, slowest computer ever in the history of the world. But there's our message, so my program is working. Now, if you are able to right-click on it, we should be able to do some Git activities. So if you right-click and go to Git, let's see if that's the same up here. Team. Oh yeah, look at all these new things. So that's what I couldn't find earlier because we didn't have a project. So all of our team tools have changed a little bit. We could show changes back and forth between things. Again, a lot for us to learn. Another facility here with GitHub, but we're going to focus on the basic tasks. So what I want to do then is right click. I'm going to choose Git because I want to look at a more focused list of what I have available. I could do a commit, which is the first thing I need to do if I have changes that I want to send to the cloud. Now I want to commit, and when I click on commit, the commit helper or wizard comes up and asks me, what is your commit message? And I'm going to say, this is my initial commit for this project. I have a lot of information here that's set for me, and by default, NetBeans has selected all of the different files that are part of my project. Now I want all of those files to be sent up because I want this to be a complete project. I want my poor instructor to be able to just grab this and run it, not do a bunch of unzipping and trying to find things. So this is what we want. We want all of our source code to be uploaded for us so that we have a complete project in the cloud. I'm going to click this plus sign here by update task just so that you can see what's going on here. Not much, just some additional information if we were to need it. Now that all looks good, so I'm going to commit. When I commit, Just like that. I shouldn't see any sort of error messages or anything. I do see that icon has gone away that says that this project is something that needs to be checked in, that it's been changed. I'm going to look for the Windows again. Now, as we look at our tools that are available to us, notice we could revert those changes. If we had a commit that we didn't want to actually send to the cloud, we could shelve the changes. We can look at our history, do all sorts of things. But now that we've got our commit made, we need to access our remote system and we want to push it, right? Before we do that, let's go look at our GitHub repository online. I still have mine open. I'm going to refresh, make sure nothing has changed. Shouldn't. We haven't done anything to it. So this is how it looks right now. Now I'm going to go back to NetBeans, and I want to do a push to my remote system. We can see that something's happening. It's pushing it to the remote system. If I look at my output messages, I should be able to see some things. So here's the end of our commit, pushing. So we have a lot of messages that we can look at here in NetBeans. Now I'm going to go back to my GitHub repo online and refresh now. And there is my project. Voila! Yay! It's actually here. Now for this project, there's a few things that I could do if I wanted to make changes to it. If I want to just view it online in GitHub, I can. I can go into the source folder. I can look at the Java file. I can see what's going on there. Or I could go in here and download this if I wanted to. I could create a fork of this project saying that I wanted to do further updates, and just looking at things, and I could do all sorts of different things. So if I want to branch this off and create a new version of this project, I could. What I'm thinking about though is, what if I've gotten this project corrupted on my local machine and for whatever reason I don't have a copy of it? Well, in that case, I could just use my NetBeans, and I should be able to bring up that source. What did we see? We should be able to fetch it, or we can look at our repository browser. Now, here's my repository browser. It's saying here's my repository name, master. I have my local and remote branch. My remote is master. My local is master in sync with origin master. Everything looks good there. Here is my remote setup, how my repository was set up in NetBeans. So I can find all this information through the Git repository browser. So great things that I can do. Now if I want to update my code, I can do it pretty simply. I've still got this project here. I'm going to add another line. And I'm going to run it. Now, I've changed this, and it's not in sync with what I have on the web, on GitHub. So I've got to be careful, right? Well, NetBeans is going to help us with that. And it's going to mark everything again as having been revised. It says you need to revise what you have in your repository because it doesn't match this version. So again, to fix that, I can just right click, and the first thing I'm going to do is what? What am I going to do? We want to commit it, right? So we're going to do our git commit, and in our commit, we're going to say added a second message. Something meaningful, right? Because we don't want this to just be completely meaningless. If we have some sort of problem and we need to revert to an earlier version, we'd like to know what version we're reverting to. Now, in this commit, notice I only have one file that's going to be pushed to the server because I've only changed the .java file. All of the other project support files have remained unchanged. So I'm going to commit that. Again, I could look at my output messages and find the end of my commit. Alright, everything worked there. So now that I've got it committed, I need to go to Git and push it to my remote. Now, if I go back to GitHub, I should be able to refresh. Right now it says 6 minutes ago. Oh yeah, we got a new one 42 seconds ago. And if we look at our source code, we should see our second message. So, you as a developer are going to create your GitHub repository for your CIS171 projects. I'll expect to see them in a list like this on that repository. So you can use this repository for other things if you like. It doesn't matter to me. I'll just be focusing on the actual projects that you're submitting. Now these projects I'll just open using my NetBeans so you can see how it will be important to me to have that URL for your project. So if I look at test GitHub, this would be the URL I would want to give my poor instructor to be able to just open that directly from my GitHub repository into NetBeans to test and make sure that everything is working as well as it should. So now, if you are looking around GitHub and you find some other things that you like, which I'm sure you will, do let me know. Let the rest of the class know if you find something awesome that you think will be beneficial to everybody or that will make our workload lighter. We all have plenty to do, of course, and we want to minimize our problems. You're using GitHub so that you can get experience using an industry standard version control system, and this is important for you in getting a job in the future because this is the kind of technology that software developers use every day and are very familiar with. So as you work with GitHub, remember it's not here to make your life harder. It's here to make sure that you have the experience that you need to be able to go to work ready to go so that you can get that job and be all productive right away. Let me know if you have any questions or problems. I hope this all works great for us, and thank you.